Hello and welcome to Top Story here on France 24. Imagine a former president's son, a thriller writer, and the former interior minister of a major Western country going on trial for illegal arms sales to Africa. Suitcases full of cash allegedly changing hands in a Paris mansion. Sounds like a Hollywood scenario? Well, it's happening in France now. After a 7-year investigation, 42 defendants have appeared in court in the French capital. They're accused of benefiting from a secret operation to sidestep a ban on selling weapons to Angola. In the 1990s, Angola's Marxist government needed ammunition against US-backed UNITA rebels. It's claimed that Jean-Christophe Mitterrand, son of former French President François Mitterrand, put Angola's leader in touch with two businessmen, the Russian-Israeli billionaire Arkady Gaydamak and Frenchman Pierre Falcone, allegedly gave wads of cash to French and Angolan officials in return for favours. To discuss the ramifications of this trial, I'm joined now by Alex Yesley, head of special projects at the anti-corruption NGO Global Witness. Good morning.
Good morning.
This doesn't seem very flattering either for France or for Angola, so who needs this trial?
Well, certainly Angola and France don't need the trial. I think the people of Angola need the trial. They need to see what happened during the civil war in their country to really expose, some of the corruption and how, a lot of billions of dollars disappeared out of Angola. But also, I think there's some people that are really benefiting from the trial, also US oil companies.
Do you believe it's particularly embarrassing for France? Does it take skeletons out of the French cupboard of the 1980s?
It certainly takes some skeletons out of the cupboard, but it's nothing worse that hasn't happened with other countries. In the UK, for example, we have a very embarrassing trial with British Aerospace, and the US have certainly got their fair share of embarrassing arms deals that were done to arm covert regimes, etc. So it's not on a global scale that embarrassing, but certainly yes, it's going to expose some bad laundry.
It's taken a very long time to get here, 7 years in the works. Why? What do you make of the timing?
I think the French judicial system is very slow. There's obviously been some politicking going on between Angola and France to try and stall the trial. Indeed, a number of French ministers and indeed President Sarkozy have been to Angola and met with Dos Santos. And I think some sort of arrangement has come to. So how much we will see of the real dirty laundry, I'm unsure.
When you say an arrangement, are you implying that the French president could have some influence on courts?
I wouldn't go that far. What I would say is maybe that between the President of Angola and the President of France that an understanding has come to, and indeed President Sarkozy said a new chapter should be turned in the relations between Angola and France. So maybe we just won't see quite so much of the illegal activity that was going on being exposed. Perhaps
there's actually more at stake for Angola because President Dos Santos was the leader during this whole alleged scam, wasn't he?
He was indeed. What is really interesting is, in Angola now they've just had elections. He's trying to create a fresh face, and it really is. It would be good for Angola to go down a new road of non-corruption. But there is so much corruption in Angola. There are many key people very close to Dos Santos who depend on him for their own financial survival, and they're really keeping him there.
Just to come back to the trial, Alex, you were there yesterday in court. That trial's going to continue for several months. What was it like yesterday?
The atmosphere was electric, as you might expect, such a long-awaited trial. Seeing some of the key protagonists in the trial, some were looking pretty shocked. Jean-Christophe Mitterrand was not looking particularly well. I think he's been through a pretty tough time on this. Pierre Falcone was looking very, very statuesque and very, I think he's going to ride it out with no problem. And really, it's just it's a long-awaited trial that is really going to get to the the underbelly of some pretty nasty stuff.
Was the general feeling that the defendants would be that the case would be thrown out on a technicality?
I think that's always a possibility, and with what I was saying earlier about some sort of arrangement being come to, that is a fear. However, I don't think the French judiciary will let that happen. Also, we have to say there's a lot of lawyers being paid a lot of money to keep this going, so it's in their interest to keep it going as well. Maybe slightly cynical, but
of course the defence saying that France is not even qualified to try this case because the arms didn't transit through France.
That's been their argument for quite a while. I don't hold that argument. These were French nationals with French companies and involved a lot of senior French politicians. So with all these arms deals, people always say they never cross the country, but they have to have trials to expose.
What are the risks for the leading figures involved? I mean, a lot of dark chapters in some of these people's histories, but one of them, Jacques Attali, for example, is an advisor to President Sarkozy still.
It's certainly embarrassing. Whether they will actually be convicted and charged, we're going to see in several months' time. The question is how much money was taken, was it illicit, did people pay tax on it? These sorts of things. Can they justify having, used their influence legitimately? So there is, there are people in high positions of power in Angola still that benefited, in enormous sums of money. They should be concerned and really looking at the global financial system and where that money is now and how it's being used.
Do you think ultimately, though, because this dates back to the late Cold War period originally, that people will just say, well, these things happened, people, Western countries simply supported both sides in the Cold War divide in African countries. What's the big deal?
Absolutely, I think that's it's quite a fair thing to say, and this was not unique to France. It was not unique to Angola, and Angola had justification. They needed the weapons. They were facing a pretty nasty organisation called UNITA that were being funded and trained by the CIA and the Americans, and they had a legitimate need to get weapons. The question is how they got the weapons, and whether that was undue influence, and how that has led into geopolitical interests of today.
We're coming to the end of the programme, Alex. How does all this play into oil rivalries now in Angola?
Plays directly into the hands of foreign oil companies that aren't French. So, Total nearly got thrown out of Angola. They nearly lost their concessions. The Americans' oil companies will be loving this. Any dirt that, shows their rivals up and basically, hopes that they won't get the concessions out of them is going to be good news for them.
Is there a hope that Angola is now going to become more open in allowing more foreign oil companies in now that it's had its first elections in 16 years? Is it becoming sort of internationally respectable?
Angola's never had a problem of getting the oil companies coming. Angola is now Africa's largest producer of oil. The question is, how much money is going into the budget, and whether it trickles down to the long-suffering population.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex Yesley from the anti-corruption NGO Global Witness. Do join us for another edition of Top Story at the same time tomorrow morning.
With Jacques Attali, Lessons for the Future. In 15 episodes, he tells us the story of the 2,000-years-old never-ending march of money. A striking overview of the 9 hearts of capitalism, century after century, city after city. A retrospective, enlightened look on today's difficulties of contemporary capitalism. Looking ahead towards the future, with one crucial question standing out. What place does France hold today? What will its role be tomorrow? Don't miss Lessons for the Future every Tuesday, 6:55 p.m. Paris time on France 24.